What's going on, everybody? Now, as I've said a few times, one of my favorite things to do is talk about cards, which is really the focus of this channel. And everything that I do just is sharing thoughts and opinions and discussions. And I really love doing collaborations. And there's one guest that I have that so many of you seem to enjoy, maybe the most of any guest. And he's been on a few times, and that is my dad. Now, whether you call him Coach, whether you call him Midlife Dad, whether you call him Mike, my dad is a longtime collector and certainly has opinions about the hobby, where we are, where we're headed, where he is in his collecting and where he's headed. And so I sat down with him recently and we had a conversation. Now, included in that conversation were some questions from each of you. Now, the last time I had him on was early July, before the National. And I suggested, hey, if anybody has a question that you'd like me to ask him in the next time he visits and the next time he's on the channel, leave it in the comments below and I'll ask him. And so a couple of questions that come up today in this conversation with my dad were left from some of you from that last video that he was on. With that said, he definitely will come back. He's going to be a somewhat regular. Every 2 months, 3 months or so, I'll try to have a conversation with my dad. So if you have something you'd like me to ask him, just simply ask it in the comments below, and I'll share it with him the next time he's on. That said, we had a really fun discussion. We covered a lot of topics, including what is his new Grail card after picking up his 53 Topps Mantle at the National, which was his current Grail at the time. What's his new Grail? What does he think of where we are in the hobby? What does he think of a whole bunch of different things? So check this out, and I think you're really going to enjoy it. I certainly did. All right, so here we are, one of my most popular guests. I'm here with my dad, Coach, Midlife Dad, whatever you want to call him. How's it going, Dad?
It's going pretty good.
What did you do earlier today?
I went to my granddaughter's soccer game.
How'd she do?
They were able to limit her to just 3 goals and 1 assist out of their 5 goals that they scored. So they were able to corral her pretty well to hold her down like that. But
yeah, at least you had a pretty good game today.
She was pretty awesome. She's a great passer, because it sounds whenever you talk about somebody that's making a lot of goals, you think, well, maybe they're a ball hog or something. She is not a ball hog. She is an outstanding passer and does a great job of trying to set up others.
You might actually pass too much.
Yeah, well,
there are times she should probably take it to the goal more, but whatever.
Well, maybe. And I think that's definitely true in school ball, where she has to be more of almost a much even bigger part of the offense that she is now.
Yeah.
Yeah, because of the level.
So last time you were on, it was before the National, and we had a lot of national prep and a lot of plans and a lot of thoughts and a lot of strategies, and we talked about maybe some targets and some tips for people who had never been to a national based on your experience. So I've got a few questions for you, which I'll share on the screen here in a second. And then the other thing I did in that video is I asked people, hey, if there's anything you want to ask my dad, then feel free to leave a comment. And so I fetched some of those. So some of these questions will be from me and some will be from some of your fans. How's that sound?
Well, they're your fans. They're just nice enough to include me on occasion.
All right, so let me pull this up for us. So the first one is a question from me. So you've been to several nationals over the years, and but you hadn't been to one in a while.
Long while.
This is the first time you had been in,
maybe 15 years or so.
Hmm.
Describe this year's national and how it differed from past nationals that you've attended.
Um, for one thing, I have a lot more money to spend this time than I ever took to a national before, because I've gotten older, and uh, with age, you sort of accumulate more cash and that kind of thing. But in terms of the biggest difference for me was I was going for entirely different stuff than I ever had before, because I've completely changed my focus of what my collection is. And so uh, I don't know how much it's changed, other than the things I was seeing were things that I never looked at before. And so that's the biggest part that changed for me, is the fact that I've opened some doors of things that I really start to have a passion for. And we're zeroing in on an entirely different group of cards than I ever had before. I think there's a lot of similarities. The grading company thing was big then, but it seemed to maybe even be more so now. Um, there were a lot more. I don't know. I think there might have even been more quality vintage people there than I remember in the past. But I don't know. I see another thing. First started going to nationals, I was a set collector, and now my not only am I going for different cards, I'm going for different cards in different years. So I used to really focus pretty heavily in the commons binders and that kind of thing, which I don't do anymore. So
So you were showcase shopping more this time instead of
exactly.
digging
Right.
for
Yeah.
cardboard gold.
Right. I used to have, as we've probably, anybody that may have seen me before knew that I was somebody that was kind of searching those things out to a very heavy degree, and was a pop expert in picking up stuff. That's the furthest thing from anything that I would do now. And so I
Now,
would,
so you had a different experience. So the show was similar,
yeah, I
but
think it's very similar.
so I want to talk more about that in a second. Well, let's talk about it now. Do you think the show should be similar? Or do you think in 20 years there's been no real evolution as to what the national is? Do you think there should be evolution in what the national is? Or do you think what they do is what they should continue to do?
Well, for my purposes, for what I collect, I was happy that it was similar to what had been before. But for people that have different collections that are going for different things, that might be not so good for them. So, in terms of what's good for the hobby, I guess there should be a wide range of things of modern and old. One thing I think that could improve the national is that they put the same kind of areas together, like put more of the vintage together and the non-vintage together, because there were some really good vintage dealers that were in the section that was almost, that was pretty heavily new cards,
Yeah.
and they were almost like kind of out of place, and it seems
Yeah.
like they would have been better off. The show would have been better off if they could have matched them up a little bit better than they did. It was done to a minor extent, but I think that's an improvement that would make it even better.
Because the way it works right now is the person who's been around the longest has
Right,
first choice in where they go.
right, right,
So a lot of the old timers are selling
right.
probably vintage, so they probably
Yeah,
pick the main room in the same kind of area.
yeah. No, I can see that, but there were some people I think have been in the hobby an awfully long time that were in the section. I mean, maybe, and they were like mature people, so that you could tell that they weren't like the new kid on the block, and they were still in the subsidiary room rather than in the main room.
Right.
I think of the Payne what
Mike
being
Payne, yeah, or
Mike
Tim
Payne,
Payne. Tim Payne.
Tim Payne is an example. He was in the predominantly new area,
Hmm.
um, and you know,
Let me ask you another question about the National. Do you think that the Nationals should be in the same place every year, or do you think it should be rotating, kind of like it has been? And are there areas that they've been doing like a question I've been asked a few times is, okay, the next 3 years it's going to be in Chicago. The following year, do you think it should be in Chicago, or do you think it should be in Atlanta, or do you think it should be in Dallas or LA or San Francisco or Seattle? Like, do you think it should move around, or do you think it should just be in one place?
well, there was a time when it did move around, and I like that because there was, on some occasions, I didn't have to travel, 2,000 to 3,000 miles to get to it. It was, I'm on the West Coast, and I've been to one in San Francisco, and I've been to one in Los Angeles. And of course, those are nice for us. I can see how centrally located within the country, um, it, you know, I mean, the way it is now is the second best way. I think it should be rotated more. But if they weren't going to rotate it more, then centralizing it like they've been doing uh, almost entirely for the last couple decades is probably the next best way to go.
It has been in New Jersey,
Yeah,
or not? Yeah, in
Atlantic City.
Atlantic City, yeah.
Yeah, I've been to one there, and that's a long
But
trek.
Cleveland and a lot of Cleveland and a lot of Chicago.
Right, I've been to both Cleveland a couple of times and Chicago a couple of times.
Now there was another big difference between this national and past nationals, which is I was there and
Yeah.
you knew a lot of people, and before
Oh yeah.
when you went you were kind of lone wolf in it. So what was that like for you?
That was fun. There's a couple times that I would meet up with people. It wasn't through YouTube or anything. I had some people who would buy stuff from me, and we kind of have a little relationship because of that. Like they'd buy from me on eBay, and then we talk about maybe meeting up at the National. So there are a few people, but nothing like this was. Meeting all your YouTube friends was amazing, and they were so gracious to me. Just including me, just like I was one of the YouTube creators.
Well, you are.
I make cameo appearances on my son's channel. I don't know that makes me a YouTube.
You're like Mike Petty, which you got to spend. You got to spend the day with Mike Petty when he came up to Sacramento, so that was cool.
Oh, Mike Petty is a great guy, and whenever you're eating a meal with Mike, he's paying for it. I had a nice steak meal that was on him, and he was not going to let anybody else pay for anything. But at the same time, he's just fun. He went to this little show that had a couple of really nice cards, and to see Guy plop down the kind of cash he was plopping down to buy what was that Stan Musial card that he bought for one. Red Heart that was really nice. I did the little of that at the National this year, but I think that's kind of a regular occurrence for him. So that's kind of fun to be around that. It's pretty entertaining.
And just to wrap up the National, if people didn't see, I did a couple of National videos, and then I did sort of showing off what you picked up. Mm-hmm. Obviously, your biggest pickup was your 53 Tops mantle.
Right.
And then you got a 57 Maze, mm-hmm. and you got a 57 Drysdale.
Mm-hmm.
And what were some of the other things that you got?
57 Koufax.
57 Koufax.
54 Yellow Ted Williams. Of course, now that I'm drawing blank.
No, that was most of it.
No, I got a 56 Jackie Robinson.
Oh yeah, you had been wanting that card for a while.
Oh, that
you got a really nice one of those.
That was at the top of my list for quite a while. So,
all right, let's move on to the next question. And I just asked this, I guess. What changes would you make? You kind of said you're kind of good with it. It's interesting to me because a lot of these other people are talking about, oh, they need to do this, they need to do that, they need to, have speakers, and they need to have presentations, and they need to have, all this action and stuff. And I'm like, why?
Yeah.
I don't think. See, the
I
thing
had a blast. I had so much fun.
To me, I look at, well, you would make changes if it wasn't working, but when it's absolutely slammed the whole time, why would you suddenly change the whole presentation? That doesn't make any. People say, oh, it needs to evolve.
Right.
Why? If it was dead, then evolve, but it's completely jammed. So I don't understand why it would need to evolve. But
yeah, I agree with that.
All right, so Andrew is a long-time commenter on a lot of channels. He's he would be in the commenter Hall of Fame for sure.
I think he's actually responded to some of my comments that I made on some other people's, yours.
No doubt. He's very active in chats, on live streams, and active in comments and the comment boards for sure. He's got a few questions. So let's start with this first one. First question is, do you still prefer raw cards over graded? At one time, you were very anti the grading companies, and you had been cracking cards out of slabs and having them raw. Do you still prefer them raw over graded?
I like to buy raw cards, and then I like to buy raw cards from people who I trust, and then get them graded. I didn't used to like them in plastic, so that's, I think, the crux of what this question is. I don't mind them being in plastic anymore, but there was a time where there's been a couple of times. I'm on stage 4 here in terms of back and forth, in terms of being in plastic and not being in plastic, and now I'm back to in plastic. But I really like buying what I think is a nice raw card, and then get it graded, and being happy with my choice because it grades so high. That's one of the rushes that I get from the hobby.
It's rewarding. It's rewarding when you get a good grade on a raw card, because you're like, see, I was right. It was a nice card. It should have been graded because the guy sold it to me at the raw price, and now it's at the higher price. So you get a deal, and then it also tells you that the grading company agreed with your opinion of it.
Yeah, it's a vote of confidence for what you're doing. So I get a rush out of that. Even cards that I don't plan to keep. I buy it because I might even already have the card, but I buy it because it's such a good price, because it's raw, and then I get it graded, and then I sell it for often double or more than what I paid for it. So that gives me money. I kind of like to use the money that I have in the hobby to get things I don't have. That's another one of the things I get a kind of a rush from is there's been a lot of things that I've had for years, and I'm just sort of a little bit tired of those, and there's things I want instead. And when I can convert something I had into something that I want to have now, that's a lot of fun.
All right, next one. How about still collecting and enjoying collecting minor stars, some of the unheralded players that might have been overlooked during their playing days, and not as much today? So what's your take on that? I know there's a couple of guys that you've talked about and that you have bought cards of even fairly recently that are some of the minor stars. What's your take on buying minor stars?
I have a lot of minor stars, and I'm gradually moving out of those. I might keep let's say Bill Skowron. He was an all-star several years in the majors, first baseman for the Yankees, home run hitter, and I have quite a few cards of him. But I'm to the point now where I'd rather maybe keep one really nice card of a player like that I like a lot, and then maybe sell the other ones so that I can accumulate funds to buy something that I have never had, that's from that time period that I'm really seeking out.
It seems to me like a lot of minor stars have become really, really affordable.
Yeah, they are.
And
Yeah.
there was a time where some of those guys
Oh, yeah.
commanded a decent price, and now
Yeah.
they've almost fallen to like commons.
I think there's still people in the hobby that recognize those talents, but there are fewer people actually going for those cards. But there's still people enough. You know, I'll run into people. I ran into some really nice people at the YouTube channel. One of the guys has been putting sets together, and he recognizes that a Bill Skowron or a Tony Kubek or Harvey Keene or somebody like that is more than a common. And there are still a few people, as long as the cards are like really nice, because there's some people that they don't want beat up ones. They'd like a really nice one of those. And I have a fair amount of those, which I will sell probably slowly, because like we talked about, people are going for the big ticket cards way more now than they used to. They used to recognize the Bill Mazeroskis and some of the people I've already mentioned, and the Kurt Floods, and people like that, Tommy John, and the people like that Beta Pinson, that were really, really good players. There's still enough people that have the history knowledge to know that those people are more than commons.
Do you think that the card values of those guys? So if I had $500 and I could buy a bunch of minor stars, or I could buy one mantle, what do you think is going to happen with the minor star values versus like a mantle or a maze or something values? Do you think that those minor stars will become less and less relevant over time, or do you think that at some point people are going to realize, hey, these are undervalued? These were really good players.
Well, there's like two classifications. There are people that haven't made the haul yet, that probably should be, because of the standards of making the haul are way different than they used to be. There are people making the haul.
The Harold Baines effect.
Yeah, the Harold Baines effect. There are a lot of people that are way better than Harold Baines. They're not in the hall. Your Dale Murphys and your Tommy Johns, and some of the ones I already mentioned, Beta Pinson, and people like that were way better than Harold Baines. That if Harold is in, then those kind of people have the potential of going up in value, because they may be entered into the Hall of Fame, and all of a sudden their card's just going to be completely different.
Sure.
And there's a lot of people. I've actually speculated a little on that. I have most of those people that I just mentioned in their rookie cards, because I think that there could be a time where they could be worth significantly more if they made the Hall. And if not, I like having them, so it doesn't really matter.
Yeah. All right. Biggest hobby pet peeve. Is there a hobby pet peeve, something that drives you nuts?
Well, it used to be, this is a long time ago, it was putting cards in plastic. That was a pet peeve. That disturbed me, but obviously, since I'm doing it myself now, that I got over it. Pet peeves in the hobby. Comparing modern day rarity to vintage rarity. I don't consider manufactured rarity the same as actual rarity. And that's what modern rarity is now. It's like 1 of 5, and 1 of 10, and 1 of 25. It bothers me that you compare that the same as some ice cream card from the 1920s, because it's like that's just a completely different kind of rarity. So that bothers me a little bit.
Okay. So I think this is a great question. What advice would you give to the younger generation who are new to the hobby and don't have much money to spend? Maybe dollar box or bargain box. Is that a good place to start?
Well, I think it's the same as like when you were a kid, you would go through dollar boxes and you have a few players that you want to do player runs on. Those aren't expensive. I mean, there are probably expensive examples of those cards, but there's also some very inexpensive examples of those. So if you were, you know, I'm not even sure because I'm not in the new card genre, but there's some really good players right now that you could pick up a lot of cards of theirs for, like we say, out of the dollar box, and
But do
and
you
that's a good way
think
to start.
but do you think okay, so I'm new to the hobby. I'm a 30-year-old, 25-year-old new to the
Oh, okay.
hobby.
I thought we're talking about 8 and 10 year olds.
No, let's say I'm a new to the hobby 25 or 25-year-old and I don't have a lot of disposable income. And what direction would you kind of point them? I think that's what Andrew's asking here is would
Okay.
because you
Well,
wouldn't point them to the modern dollar box.
no, I wouldn't.
So what would you point
I
them
thought we were
toward?
talking about kids rather than adults
Sure.
that want to start to enjoy the hobby. You've shown some awfully good examples a couple times a month of cards that are relatively inexpensive of really named players that you can get, say, for under $50. Now, I don't know what kind of budget we're exactly what we're talking about here, but I mean, if you can get a Willie Mays card for under $50, or a Clemente, or even a Mantle, or I say even a Mantle not because I think he's better than those players, but his cards just become more valuable for one reason or another. But you can buy a lot of really cool cards of players for inexpensive amounts in the vintage area. Again, I don't see why someone who's 30 would start collecting something new, but then that's just me. I'm so tunneled in to the history of the game as opposed to the present of the game. Mm-hmm. That's why I would always kind of. So I might not be the best person to ask that question because
Sure.
There's some really great new cards that people can enjoy and maybe get at a reasonable price.
And then the last one from him, do you spend any time looking through those sorts of bargain boxes it shows?
Well, since I used to, in fact, when we first started, when you started your channel, and somehow I ended up at card shows again, and I was walking around.
I was dragging you there. I was like, we're going.
Yeah. Well, see, he's worried about his lonely old widower dad that had nothing to do, and he needed some entertainment that might occupy his time in a positive way. But I did. For a while, I was going through those, and it was some old player, a minor, like the minor stars we were just talking about, and I would pick some of those up at reasonable prices and stuff. But now I've really gone to the point where I want my collection to be 50 really good quality vintage cards from ages gone by, and then maybe another 25 or 30 just Yankees. So somewhere between 80 and 100 cards. I'd like to get down to that point where I might have a Bill Skowron, but I just have one really nice one. It may be a fairly high grade too. That kind of thing.
All right. My next question I have, 2 years ago, you were collecting more cards from the late 50s and a lot of the 60s. But recently, last 7, 8, 9 months, you've started collecting more mid 50s and early 50s. It seems like a lot of collectors are going older and older. Why do you think that is?
I think one of the reasons that people we always talk about are the people not going to care about the Willie Mays and the Hank Aaron's and everything? Is like you're nostalgic about the years that you collected, but you're also interested over time when you've kind of saturated that. I mean, you can't get more saturated than having a complete 59 and 60 set with those 2 years. And those I enjoyed for a long time. And now I'm just sort of like, I want something new. I want something different. And I wasn't going to go later, so I started going earlier. And I think
why not go later? Why was that not an option?
I didn't find those as they weren't attractive to my eye as much. I always thought some of the older cards were cool to look at, but my original focus was I'm going to recreate my collection. And then I always thought, these cards really are the more cool. And so when I decided that I was going to get away from the cards I collected as a kid, I wanted the ones. I think the cards from the 53 to 58 are like some of the greatest sets ever. I love those cards. There's usually a good, nice portrait of the player and maybe some kind of action shot with most of them. Not the 58s, but, before that, a few years before that, there's a lot of, both the profile and the action part, that's why I like the 56s so much. And I like the 55s. I don't have many 55s, but I think that's probably the next set that I'm going to start buying more of.
Do you think it could partly be because as we get older, we have more money and those older cards are more expensive? And
Right.
so they're now in your budget when before they weren't in your budget?
Oh,
Is that maybe?
I think that's definitely a possibility. I mean, I really think that if I didn't have more money, I wouldn't be buying them. So there's got to be a focus to the fact that you've got more money to spend than you can actually pull the trigger on those. And I've also, when I collected before, I needed to have like pristine cards, and I am much more willing to have a card that doesn't look like it just came out of a pack than I used to. I mean,
It's funny because like a couple of the things that you've been saying over the last few minutes are foreshadowing some of the questions that are coming, which it's almost like I can tell where your mind is going with things, but that's probably because we talk about it. Next question is the first part's a joke, but does your dad have lists? Or do you have your want lists and your targets all in your head?
I write them down sometimes so I don't forget. I am 74, so you're going to make sure that that you remember everything that you want to get. I write out a list every so often. I don't. I took a list to the National this year, which I had never done before, because I didn't want to forget. I mean, it's to the point now where the National is really the only show I can go to and have a high degree of possibility that there'd be something that I want to buy for my own collection. And so I wanted to make sure I didn't forget anything that, I get home. Oh, I didn't get a Sandy 57 Copex, and I wanted to get one of those. I didn't want that to happen. But every once in a while, just for fun, I'll just write down a little list and then pay no attention to it afterwards. It's just like,
Now, so you just said that going to the National is like one of the only shows where you would actually see things that you would want. So do you think when we go to like the local shows, is that just more for something to do and not really to actually buy cards for your collection?
On occasion, I do find cards that go in my collection. There's a guy at one of our local shows that has brought out some stuff. He's kind of new to be doing shows out here. He was mainly an online guy, and I've bought several cards. I would say I bought 10 cards. Remember, I'm looking for a collection of about 80, and I've got probably about 10 cards from that guy that are going directly into my collection. So it does happen. I got my 56 Clementi at the show that we did down in Fairfield, which was at the top of my list of something that I wanted. So it does happen on occasion, but I don't expect it to happen. I mean, it's almost like it's a call to me when I see one of those cards at the collection that I'm going to buy it, because if it meets my eye anyway, because it's so rare that a local show I see something like that.
Now, for a long time, a lot of the cards that you've got, you're talking about the 56 set, the 57 set, and before that, it was really 58, 59, 60. You've been a lot of like second year, third year cards.
Mm-hmm.
And now you're talking, well, maybe I'll go 55s. Well, there's 3 really big rookie cards in the
Mm-hmm.
55 set.
Right.
Are you at the point now where you're thinking that you might start picking up some more of the bigger boy cards instead of the other second, third year thing? Or
I don't know. I have a hard time, other than being a Mantle card, I have a hard time thinking that I'm going to plop down $5,000 for someone that isn't Mickey Mantle. Um, I really like the cards where the second year card of somebody where the picture is exactly the same.
Mhm.
Like I just bought the Clementi, the 56 Clementi is the same, basically the same card as his rookie card at a tenth the price.
Yeah.
And I'm really looking at the 55 LK line because it's the exact same photo,
Yeah.
and it's a fraction of the price. I mean,
Yeah.
you can get a nice one of those for $150, where the rookie you're paying thousands for.
Yeah.
And so I don't. It doesn't have to be. And then some of those guys, like the Sandy Koufax rookie on the back, there's no statistics. He's not even in the league yet. He hasn't even played a major league game yet. So the fact that I have his second year, that's the first one that would have any statistics on it. So I don't know. I don't like paying big time money just so I can say I have somebody's rookie.
Okay.
Especially if he has a card fairly soon after that. I mean, like the Pete Rose. Why would I want the floating head Pete Rose when I can have the one that's got the trophy on it the next year?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not a middle 60s collector, but if I were, I would pick the trophy Rose over the heads anytime.
Gotcha. Now you started to kind of wade into the waters of this question that I knew was coming. A lot of modern collectors feel that vintage cards and players will be irrelevant in a few years.
Mm-hmm.
I know you disagree with this. Why do you disagree with this?
Yeah, I don't think Willie Mays, Hank Aaron, and those will ever be irrelevant. I think when people say that, they're wrong. And the reason I say that is people are still collecting the Gaudi cards and the T206 cards. They're probably even collecting them more now than maybe they did at the time. They were just, I think a lot of those cards got thrown away even before the cigarette smoker got to his car or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that there will always be interest in those. And I'm not saying there won't be interest in modern cards. It's just that it's a whole different dynamic with modern cards than it is with vintage. And I'm an old person, so I like the history of the game. And I think even the people who are collecting now will see the importance of the history of the game. So they will go back earlier, like I'm going back earlier right now.
So it's like your proof that the generations, that people will care about the generations before the generations that they watched, is that people are collecting their great grandparents' generations now.
Right.
So why wouldn't they collect the great grandparent generation
Right.
later?
It doesn't change. It's still a part of the history of the game, and people who are interested in the history of the game will will continue. And what you end up doing is you always start going back and back and back, because you have everything you want. Whenever you have everything, like I had everything I wanted from 58 to 61. And I've kept the 58s because that was the first year I collected. But now I'm going earlier. But I mean, you get to the point where you say, okay, well, I want something different now. You know, that's, I mean, I think I'm living proof of that people can think that way anyway.
Yeah. All right. The next question is from your old buddy Mook.
The Mookster.
Mookie has a question. I said, hey, Mook, I'm writing some questions for an upcoming episode with Coach. Anything you'd like me to ask him for you? And he said, Coach, since you started participating in the Midlife Nation, can you name one or two things that you have changed your opinion on?
One of the, probably the biggest is eye appeal. There was a time where I didn't find that, or I guess centering is the way I should have been more specific, because there was a time where if something was 60-40 or even 65-35, that didn't bother me much as long as it was packed fresh. And now I'm focusing more on cards that are centered, at least better than that. I'm not saying I wouldn't buy a 60-40 card, because I think I'm probably just did at the National, but it's something that I look at a lot longer to decide whether it's acceptable or not. Whereas to me, before, I just looked at the four corners and the edges.
Now,
so
okay, so let's just talk about that one first.
Okay.
So you went from, I want a card that's sharp. I want it like it did when it came out of a pack. If there are flaws on it, that happened at manufacturing. Doesn't bother me as much as a flaw that happens post-manufacturing.
Right.
And now I want a card that's centered. Why is a card that is centered more appealing to you now when it has wear than a card that is sharper but is off center? Why does that suddenly more important to you?
I think that I've been brainwashed by all the people that keep focusing on centering all the time, because I never really, that was not really a focus of mine before.
Yeah.
And when you hear it so many times from so many people, you go like, well, yeah, that is kind of off center, isn't it? It's like, when you hear something enough, you have to be open-minded enough to whether that makes sense or not.
But there are a lot of things that you've heard living in California a lot of times that over and over and over, this should be, that maybe you don't agree with. So,
right. But those are stupid. this is reasonable.
Do you think that a centered card with rounded corners looks nicer than a sharp card that's off center?
It really depends on how much wear we're talking about.
Okay.
It can't have a ton of wear and still be okay with me.
What is rarer? Is it rarer to find a centered card, or is it rarer to find a sharp card?
They're both very rare in their own respects. The sharp card is really rare because it has to be somebody that opened the pack, put them in a box, and they found it in their grandkids found it in their cupboard, 30 years later. Those are the ones that have sharp corners, because there was no protection in those days. And the other's rare because the ability of the card companies to make centered cards was really weak in those days. I mean, there's some cards that you almost can never find centered. I mean, even something as new as an Ozzie Smith rookie, that there's like less than 1% that are anywhere near 50-50 centered.
Yeah.
And that's a card that was, 20 years after the area that I collect.
Yeah.
So the quality control is what makes those rare, and non-use of something that old is what makes the rounding corners, sharp corners rare. So they're rare for different reasons.
Especially when cards were being pulled out of packs in the 50s and nobody even thought it would matter to keep it nice.
Right.
Now when a card's an 8,
Yeah.
it's like thrashed because they come out and they immediately go into protection. But
I,
not
I I would love to see the cards from when I was a kid, but I have a notion that they were really beat up because I was
yeah,
looking at them all the time. I mean,
yeah.
I had rubber bands. I organized them by team and had rubber band around it. And then I would take the rubber bands off and look at them, and then put the rubber band back on it again. So it's like none of my cards would have any um, high level value because of the fact that I really liked them and I played with them and I looked at them and
Do you remember doing much trading?
I remember older kids trying to trade with me, and I would never trade with the older kids because they like I remember I went over to a friend's house and I had just gotten some cards at one of those little machines where you put in a penny in and one card
Yeah,
comes out,
yeah,
and I had like a pile of them, so it was only a penny a card, and even of course if I had 25 cents, they came home with 25 cards.
hmm
So, and I remember a guy who wanted to trade me. It's 1958. He wanted to trade me for my Orlando Cepeda, and
mm
he had some other cards. And I'm going like, I didn't really know who Orlando Cepeda was at that point because I was just getting into the sport. But I was pretty certain that he wanted the card because it was more valuable than anything he was going to give me. So I didn't trade him, and he just thought he was going to pull a good card. I mean, that's really the rookie card almost of that set.
yeah,
I mean, what else is it's really almost a rookieless set in terms of it's got Kurt Flood in it too, but
yeah.
there are not a lot of rookies in that set. That might be. Plus, he had just won Rookie of the Year, which I did not know. But
Well,
that's one.
in your defense, also, you were 8, so
I was a
you were a third grader,
right.
so it's not like. But the kid's trying to trade you for the Cepeda, and you're like, I don't know who this is, but I smell a rat here,
Exactly.
so I'm staying away from this.
Right.
Do you remember any trades that you actually made as a
I didn't
kid?
have many kids that I knew that collected cards. I really didn't. Um, um, I don't
Which is
remember.
interesting because you played baseball and you played basketball and you played
Right,
tennis and
right,
you were
right.
active with other kids. So
I
it's
was in a
interesting.
rural area, and we didn't really live very close to each other. I mean, I didn't go over to people's house and just play much. Once in a while, somebody get on the phone and call, and like there'd be like 7 or 8 of us, and we go out to the local elementary school, play baseball and stuff. But I didn't have like next door neighbors that were anywhere near my age.
Yeah.
They were all. I was in a neighborhood where there was a bunch of kids on our street that were my brother's age, but there was no one that was my age, and or at least no one that collected cards. And so I didn't have many opportunities to trade. I probably would have been fine doing it,
hmm
but I was still at the point where I was learning who everybody was because, again, I started after seeing my brother's 57 football cards, and I was just at that point learning who people were in the
hmm
hobby,
hmm
and so
So, are there any other opinions to go back to Mook's question? Any
okay.
other opinions that have changed?
I've I have much more of an appreciation for Gaudis and T206s.
Mm.
I would go to shows before, and I was again tunnel vision, 58 through 61, and because of your interest in the hobby and all the people that you have made friendships with, I have a much higher appreciation for the Gaudis and the Tito sixes, and even some of those interesting 20s cards, like the ice cream cards, and I don't remember the names of some of those. They're like the one that had the Babe early 20s cards that had Babe Ruth, and I forget what that kind of cards those were, but
Yeah,
there's caramel. There's some caramel.
There are a lot of, yeah, there are so many, and then there's different years of caramels, and then there's different American caramels and Philadelphia caramels. There's I mean, there's so many in there that
I think they're fun to look at. They really are.
But you're not you don't have any interest in owning any of those types of cards. I mean, like, why wouldn't you want to have a Babe Ruth card?
I would like to have a Babe Ruth card. I definitely would like to have a Babe Ruth card.
Okay, so what Babe Ruth card would you be drawn toward?
I like some of the Gaudis, Babe Ruth.
Okay, and
those are still playing days for him.
Yeah. And so, would you? So is that like a possible target for next year's national? Is a Babe Ruth?
It would depend on price point.
Well, they're expensive.
I know they're expensive, but I mean, I bought a $3,500 card. Maybe those are more than that. I don't know.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah. See.
They're quite a bit more than that, but it's Babe Ruth.
Mm-hmm. Right. I don't know.
The close observers of our talks on this channel are slowly starting to see that what I'm trying to get you to do is open up your wallet a little bit and buy more cards that you would like to have. I mean, you've been collecting for a really long time. Yeah. You're a lifelong Yankee fan, and you've never owned a Babe Ruth card. I don't see any reason why that shouldn't change.
I know what you're saying, and I just have a hard time. I'd like to, when I leave this world, I'd like to be leaving my kids some funds to be secure in their lives, and
you know how ridiculous that sounds to a lot of us, though. Is like you have money.
It's the reason, though. It is the reason.
But I'm trying to get you to reconsider
the reason.
That reason. I mean, listen, it's if you went down and you took money out of this bank account and you bought 5 gold coins, nobody would say, "What are you doing?" You know, it's just one asset to another. I think that people should be making sure that they're using the money that they've accumulated in their lifetime to find enjoyment. So I'll just throw this out there. Hey, everybody in the comments down below, do you think Coach should go buy a Gaudi Ruth next year? See what they think. But I don't see any reason. And
I
it's
feel
not
I'm
like
being ganged up here.
you are being ganged up. It's not like it's money that you're taking and just throwing it out the window. It's not that.
It is an asset.
Yeah. And it's not like it's an asset.
That's one of the reasons why I spent as much as I have. Is because I know that you guys will enjoy what I bought. And
well, that's the other thing. It's like there are people out there whose children or their spouse, whoever, have no interest or knowledge of cards. And so if they pile up just tons and tons and tons, especially of raw cards, they're almost to a certain extent maybe leaving a little bit of a burden in some regards. It's like the people who are hoarders and then their family comes in and now they've got to clean up the mess after the fact. Like that's kind of like but then there's the opposite, which is the people who don't enjoy their own life so that they aren't making somebody consider that. And you're in a situation where you have two kids who would know what those things are worth and would know how to liquidate those things if they wanted to liquidate them. And there are also things that potentially they wouldn't want to liquidate. So I don't really see the difference between you having, $5,000 in a bank account or a $5,000 Hank Aaron rookie card. I don't see a difference. If I'm missing something, let me know in the comments, but I don't think I am. I mean, ultimately, I don't care. I don't care. I don't care, Dad. I want to make sure that you're enjoying things for you instead of not enjoying things.
I think it's a little bit rich for you to say the things that you're saying to me, because I think there's a lot of times where you do without a lot because you want your family to be able to have everything they could even think they want to have.
Well, I'm also not a single 74-year-old. I can tell you this. I'll be totally honest with you. I'll be totally honest with you. If I was single and I didn't have kids that depended on my income, I would have a much bigger card collection than I have. I have a list of priorities and responsibilities that at this point where I am in life is a much different place than your situation where you can just kind of decide what you want to do. And I think I'm trying to give you the permission to free yourself to do that. That's all. You like how, I mean, we've got, I don't know how many people
I think you got me on here so that you could have people agreeing with you.
I don't know. I wasn't even.
This is a plot of some sort.
I wasn't even planning on talking about this. This is just where we went. But I don't know how many people at this point have stopped listening.
Yeah,
they probably just tuned us out like a long time ago.
Yeah, that's probably true.
But there might
I feel
be
like I might be in like some type of therapy session of some sort.
I think that we both are. I think we're working out some family therapy right here, and we've got maybe 30 therapists listening, and I'm sure that they're going to be able to share their thoughts on this. But I think that you've been very, very prudent with the gifts that you have earned and received. And I just want to make sure that you're enjoying them for you. And something that you enjoy are cards. And I think that it makes perfect sense for you to utilize those funds for that enjoyment. And I think you should have no concern, none, zero, over anything, BC, or I guess it'd be AD. I don't think you should ever think about that. I think you should just enjoy the cards. If we went to the National next year, I'm being dead serious. You went to the National next year. What? And you came and you said, "Hey, what do you think of this 33 Gaudi Ruth?" And I said, "I think it's sweet." And you started peeling off the hundreds, and I would be back there fist pumping like the guys were with me when I bought my banks, and I would also, I mean, I might slip a little sticky note on the back of it that just says Greg, on the back of the card, but I think I would make sure it didn't have my brother's name on the back. But I think that that's very reasonable.
It is.
Okay.
Like I said, I have.
So we're in agreement.
I have loosened up on that. Not to the level that you think I said, but I have. I mean, in the last 4 months, I've bought my Grail card, and then I made another Grail card, and then I bought it. So it's not like I'm holding back too much, because I bought 2 cards in the last 4 months that
people may not know what you're talking about. So tell us those 2 cards.
Well, the Grail card for me was the 56 Mantle. I love that card. And I finally decided that I was going to buy it, and I got a nice 6 online for a really good price. And I got it home, and it was everything that I thought it would be. So that was the first Grail card that I bought. And then the second one, I said, okay, well, my new Grail card is going to be the 53 Mantle, because I'm never going to get a 51 or 52, because that's just crazy money. It's like I would never pay that kind of money for something like that. And so then at the National, I bought it. So, I mean, generally Grail cards are kind of like cards that you may never get. And I bought 2 Grail cards or 2 cards that I thought I would never get in the last 4 months.
All right, so I get a lot of questions, and we'll wrap this up as we're rapidly approaching an hour.
Okay.
A question I got is I talked just ad nauseum about how my Grail card was the 54 banks, blah 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 blah. Yeah, we get it, Greg. And then I buy it, and a lot of people have asked, so now what's the new Grail? What's the new card?
For me?
No. So hold on. So you're just telling us that for a minute it was a really nice 56 Mantle. And then you got it, box checked. And then you said, oh, well, now if I were to go crazy, I would get the 53 Mantle. And then at the National, box checked. So where does that leave us? Because we all have, we all are, we don't ever stop. Once you're collecting, you're collecting. So you don't stop. So you just, as Mike Petty and my good friend Darren would say, the list regenerates. So what the list never runs out.
That's great.
It just regenerates. So the Grail regeneration is now what?
I just got the Grail card, so I'm probably going to need some time to think of. There's a lot of cards I want to get. I want to get a 57 Mantle.
No. Big. What is the big one? I mean, the 57 Mantle is a big card, but it's not the big. It's not. So when you get a Grail,
that's what I was saying. Is these cards aren't Grail cards. These are cards I want, but they're not Grail cards. I don't have one in mind at the moment, but I'm sure that
you do. I don't believe that. There's a card that you're like, oh man, that would be amazing. I think
I have to think more about it.
Okay, I think that the answer is the 51 Bowman Mantle, the rookie Mantle. That's the card.
Yeah,
you can't tell me you don't want a rookie Mickey Mantle card, right? You're back on the couch, Pop. You're back on the therapy couch, and
it's not one of my favorite Mantle cards.
So you don't want it. You wouldn't want a Mantle.
I wouldn't say the one of the things that really cheapens it for me, and a lot of these cards that are like really super expensive cards now, is they did reprints of them, and there was a reprint of the 51 Mantle that was just all over the place, and I saw it all the time, and it's hard for me to get out of my head as many times as I've seen that reprint card to get one that wasn't a reprint card. It kind of soured me a little bit on having it, and it's almost the same for the 52 Mantle. I would. I mean, there's other Mantles. There's the 53 Bowman Color Mantle. That's a nice card, and it's not anywhere near the ball. I mean, it's expensive, but it's not anywhere near the ballpark of the other Mantles.
There's not a Jackie Robinson or a Satchel Paige.
Well, there's a couple of that I would like, but it sounds like you have them on your list too. I really like the 53 Jackie Robinson.
Okay.
And you said to me the other day, now don't buy that underneath for me.
I did say that.
You did
say that.
So that sort of took that one off the table for me.
Okay.
There's a lot of things. A lot of what I want to do is I want to have cards that you don't already have, that you don't intend to buy. because I mean, I bought the 56 Ted Williams because I just had to have that card, and you already had one,
Mm-hmm.
and it felt a little weird buying it because you already had one,
Mm-hmm.
but I just had to have that card, and
Mm-hmm.
so there are some cards that you have expressed interest in buying that made it so, well, I don't need to buy one. I can look at yours anytime I want,
Mm-hmm.
and so I buy something different that I also want. There's nothing
What
buying.
about something besides baseball? What about like a Wilt Chamberlain rookie?
I would love a Will Chamberlain. Okay,
Is that possibly the next Grail?
that would not be impossible to be my next Grail. I would
Ooh.
not. I don't. I don't.
I
I
like
don't.
the sound of this.
Yeah, I don't. I've not really gone much into Grail cards of any sport other than baseball. But if there was a Grail card for basketball, that would be the card I would like more than any other card ever produced. Would be the Wilt Chamberlain card. That would be my favorite basketball card to have. If I was going to go Grail in basketball, which I'm not sure that I would do, but it is the best basketball card for me.
Yeah. Well, I think you heard it here first, folks. The big purchase at the 2025 National is going to be the 1961 Fleer Wilt Chamberlain.
I don't think you heard that here.
That's what I heard. That's what I heard. In the
Yeah.
comments below, tell me if that's what you heard. All right. Well, I guess I have a couple last things I'll say. First, if you have questions that you'd like to ask for the next appearance from my dad, then in the comments leave those questions, because he will be back. This is going to be a continued ongoing thing. And we'll give you a little bit of homework that when you're on, we will be asking you what your next Grail card is. So you're going to have to start kind of turning the wheels a little bit on it so that you can give us a pretty good idea of what that might be.
Okay.
So
I'm going to have to save my nickels and dimes.
Well, sure. Or just finally open the wallet. So I think that'll probably do it. Again, a little over an hour. We had fun at the National. It was fun talking about how it might go, and then talking about how it did go is cool. And is there anything you want to say to any of your fans out there, Dad?
I just, like I think I said earlier, that the YouTube community has been so great to me. I just can't even. I mean, I know they're your friends, but they made me feel like I was their friend too. And that,
well, they definitely would consider you their friend. I have no doubt about that.
Well, that warms my heart because it's just really fun to go to a show and run into people that when you see them, there's a smile on their face. So that made the National really special for me.
Awesome. All right, guys. Thanks for listening. Again, leave us your questions for our next visit, and let us know if you think he should buy that Ruth next year.
Okay, here we go.